My sister listed my home for sale while I was away. 3 buyers put down deposits and 1 is now suing me. Hi everyone. Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Channel's been a bit quiet lately, and your support keeps it all going. Let's jump in. I, 34M, just discovered my apartment is for sale online. The problem? I'm not selling it. I'm completely in shock right now and not sure what to do. For context, I've been traveling for work in Europe for the past 3 weeks. I'm a software engineer for a multinational company, and while I normally work remotely from my apartment in Chicago, this project required me to be on-site in our London office for a month. My sister Ava, 30F, has been checking in on my place while I'm gone, watering plants, collecting mail, that kind of thing. Yesterday, my colleague James showed me a listing he stumbled across while browsing real estate in our neighborhood he's been looking to buy. The listing showed my apartment, complete with photos of my living room, kitchen, bedroom, and even my office. It was listed as, for sale by owner, with an asking price about 15% below market value and described as, must sell quickly, owner relocating internationally. I was dumbfounded. The photos were clearly recent. You could see some of my personal items had been moved around but not removed. In one photo of the living room, you could even see my framed diplomas on the wall and my collection of vintage vinyl records on the shelf. I immediately called Ava, but she didn't answer. I sent her multiple texts asking what was going on, but she hasn't responded. I then called my parents, who seemed oddly hesitant when I brought it up. My mom eventually admitted that yes, Ava had mentioned something about helping me sell my place, since I was moving to London permanently. The thing is, I'm not moving permanently. This is a 4-week work trip, and I've never once mentioned relocating. I've lived in my apartment for 6 years and have no plans to leave. I love this place. It's in a great location, I've completely renovated the kitchen, and I have fantastic neighbors. I've contacted the website where the listing is posted, but they said they can only remove it if the person who posted it requests removal. I've looked at the listing more carefully, and it lists an email address that I don't recognize as the contact. I'm freaking out because the listing says there's an open house scheduled for this weekend, and I'm not due back in Chicago until next Wednesday. I'm afraid people will actually show up at my apartment expecting to tour it. I've tried calling Ava again and again, but she's completely ghosting me. I've also asked my parents what the hell is going on, but they're being weirdly evasive, saying things like, you should talk to your sister directly, and, I'm sure she has a reasonable explanation. I honestly don't know what to do. I'm trying to get an earlier flight home, but it's proving difficult to change my ticket. I'm worried about what kind of legal mess this could create if someone actually tries to put an offer on my apartment. Has anyone ever dealt with something like this before? What are my options? Should I file a police report for fraud? Contact a lawyer? I'm completely at a loss. Update: I just received an email from someone inquiring about the listing, asking if they could schedule a private viewing tomorrow instead of waiting for the open house. Apparently, they've already been in touch with the seller, presumably my sister, and were told that quick offers would be considered. What the actual hell is happening? Update: 2 days later. First of all, thank you to everyone who commented on my original post. Your advice and support have been incredibly helpful during what has turned out to be an absolutely insane situation. I managed to get on an earlier flight and arrived back in Chicago late last night. After dropping my bags at a hotel downtown, I didn't want to go straight to my apartment in case there were potential buyers lurking around. I finally got in touch with Ava this morning. What I learned has left me completely stunned. It turns out that about 6 months ago, I had mentioned to my parents that I was considering applying for a position in our London office. It was just a casual conversation. The position wasn't even open yet, and I was merely exploring the possibility. I ultimately decided against it and never brought it up again. Apparently, my parents interpreted this as me having concrete plans to move abroad. When I told them I was going to London for a month-long project, they somehow concluded that this was the beginning of my permanent relocation. Instead of, asking me directly, they shared this assumption with Ava. Here's where things get truly bizarre. According to Ava, our parents gave her copies of my deed and mortgage documents, just in case something happened to me years ago when I first bought the place. I vaguely remember signing something allowing them to have copies, but it was intended as an emergency backup, not a license to sell my property. Ava claims she was just trying to help by getting a head start on selling my apartment since she knew I'd be staying in London. She said she figured I'd be too busy with my new life to handle the sale myself, and she wanted to surprise me by having potential buyers lined up when I officially announced my move. When I asked why she didn't respond to my calls and messages, she said she wanted to finalize the details before discussing it with me so she could present a complete plan. She seemed genuinely shocked that I was upset, insisting she was doing me a favor. The most concerning part? She's already collected $2,500 good faith deposits from 3 different potential buyers who were particularly interested in the property. She had them sign some makeshift reservation agreements that she drafted herself. She's not a real estate agent or lawyer, by the way, she works in marketing. I immediately contacted my actual real estate attorney, who was as horrified as you might expect. He's helping me draft communications to these buyers, explaining the situation and returning their deposits. He's also advised me to have a serious talk with my parents about boundaries and document security. I've taken the following steps so far. 1. The listing has been removed from all websites where Ava posted it. 2. I've changed the locks to my apartment. Ava had a key. 3. I'm staying at my place now and have put signs on the door clearly stating, "Property not for sale. Listing was fraudulent," in case anyone shows up for the previously advertised open house. 4. My attorney is preparing documents for Ava to sign acknowledging that she had no legal right to list my property. 5. I've asked my parents to return all copies of my personal documents immediately. My parents are trying to downplay the whole thing as a simple misunderstanding and are upset that I'm overreacting. They keep saying that Ava meant well and that I'm being too harsh on her. I'm honestly flabbergasted at their response. Ava has apologized, but her apology focused more on how she didn't realize I'd be so upset about it, rather than acknowledging the fundamental violation of boundaries and potentially illegal activity. I'm still trying to process all of this. How do you rebuild trust with family after something like this happens? I'm especially concerned about the potential buyers who put down deposits. What if they don't accept that the listing was fraudulent and try to enforce their agreements? I'll update again when I have more information. Right now, I'm just trying to contain the damage and figure out my next steps. Update 2, 2 months later. It's been about 2 months since my last update, and unfortunately, things have gotten worse before they got better. As many of you predicted, the situation with the potential buyers turned into a legal nightmare. 2 of the 3 people who put down deposits accepted my explanation and took their money back without issue. The 3rd couple, however, refused to believe that Ava wasn't authorized to sell the property. This couple, let's call them the Millers, had apparently fallen in love with my apartment based on the listing and the tour Ava gave them. They claimed that since Ava had presented herself as having authority to sell the property and had accepted their deposit, they had a valid contract. They threatened to sue both me and Ava for breach of contract, fraudulent misrepresentation, and specific performance, forcing the sale. My real estate attorney assured me that they didn't have a case, as Ava had no legal authority to sell my property regardless of what she told them. However, to be safe, we filed a declaration with the county recorder's office stating that no sale of my property was authorized or pending. About 3 weeks ago, the Millers filed a lawsuit against both Ava and me. Their lawyer argued that since Ava had been given access to my property and my documentation, she had apparent authority to act on my behalf. It was a weak argument, but enough to cause serious stress and legal expenses. Meanwhile, my relationship with my family has been extremely strained. My parents finally admitted that they had encouraged Ava's actions because they thought it would force me to be honest about my supposed plans to move to London. Apparently, they were convinced I was hiding my real plans from them to avoid their disapproval. Instead of asking me directly, they decided that this elaborate scheme would somehow reveal the truth. Ava has become increasingly defensive as the legal situation escalated. She initially agreed to cover any legal expenses related to the Miller situation, but when the actual lawsuit was filed, she balked at the cost and suggested we just sell them the apartment to make this all go away. When I refused, she accused me of being stubborn and making things worse. The one silver lining is that my company has been incredibly supportive. When I explained the situation to my boss, she connected me with the company's legal team who provided additional advice and resources. They also assured me that my position here in Chicago is secure, which was reassuring given all the confusion about my supposed relocation. Last week, we had a breakthrough in the legal case. The judge granted our motion to dismiss, citing clear evidence that Ava had no legal authority to sell the property. The Millers were ordered to accept the return of their deposit and cover a portion of our legal fees. Their attorney has indicated they won't appeal, which is a huge relief. With the legal issues mostly resolved, I've been trying to repair the damage to my family relationships, but it's been challenging. I suggested family therapy, but my parents initially resisted, arguing that we should just move past it without dragging outsiders into family business. Ava alternates between tearful apologies and indignant defenses of her actions, depending on the day. I'm still struggling to understand how my family could think any of this was acceptable behavior. The violation of trust and boundaries is staggering. I've started seeing a therapist individually to help process everything, which has been helpful. For now, I'm keeping my distance from my family while I figure out what kind of relationship, if any, I want to have with them going forward. I'm focusing on my work, my friends, and rebuilding a sense of security in my home. I'll update again if anything significant changes. Thank you again for all your support and advice throughout this bizarre ordeal. Update 3, 6 months later. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I'm finally in a place where I can share what's happened since then. First, the legal situation has been completely resolved. After the judge dismissed the Miller's case, they made one last attempt to contact me directly, suggesting we work something out outside of court. My attorney sent them a cease and desist letter, and we haven't heard from them since. The biggest development has been with my family. After my last update, things got worse before they got better. My parents reached out to extended family members with their version of events, portraying me as unforgiving and unreasonable. This created an awkward situation at a cousin's wedding where several relatives approached me to tell me I should let it go and forgive Ava because she was just trying to help. This was the final straw for me. I sent an email to my immediate family detailing exactly what had happened, how their actions had affected me both emotionally and financially, and stating that I would be taking a break from family gatherings until we could address these issues properly. I also included screenshots of the fraudulent listing and copies of the legal documents from the Miller case to ensure there was no confusion about the severity of the situation. The email seemed to finally break through their denial. My mother called me in tears the next day, admitting that they had completely violated my trust and boundaries. For the first time, she acknowledged that what they did wasn't just a misunderstanding, but a serious breach of trust. We finally started family therapy about 4 months ago. The first few sessions were incredibly tense, with a lot of defensiveness, particularly from Ava and my dad. But slowly, we began to unpack some long-standing family dynamics that contributed to this bizarre situation. Through therapy, we uncovered that my parents have always had an unhealthy level of involvement in their adult children's lives. They've struggled to see us as independent adults capable of making our own decisions. Ava, as the younger sibling, had fallen into a pattern of trying to please them by aligning with their perspectives and acting as their proxy. The most surprising revelation came during our 5th therapy session when Ava broke down and admitted that she had actually disagreed with my parents about listing my apartment but went along with it because she always does what they think is best. She confessed to feeling trapped in a role as the good daughter who never questions their judgment. This was a breakthrough moment. For the first time, we were addressing the actual problem instead of just the symptoms. Our therapist has been helping us establish healthier boundaries and communication patterns. As for practical matters, I've taken several steps to protect myself. 1. I've created a revocable trust for my property and other assets, with clear documentation about who has authority to make decisions. 2. I've revoked all previous powers of attorney and created new, very specific ones that clearly outline who can do what and under what circumstances. 3. I've installed a security system in my apartment with cameras that alert me to any visitors. 4. I've had serious conversations with my neighbors to ensure they know to contact me directly if anything seems unusual. My relationship with my family is slowly improving, but it's fundamentally changed. We're more cautious with each other now, more formal in some ways. I no longer share details about my career plans or financial decisions with them. When I recently decided to actually apply for a position in our San Francisco office, the irony isn't lost on me. I didn't tell them until after I had accepted the offer and signed the contract. Ava and I have had several one-on-one conversations outside of therapy. She's shown genuine remorse and has been working hard in her individual therapy to understand why she went along with such an outrageous plan. Our relationship is still fragile, but we're making progress. My parents have finally respected my request to return all copies of my personal documents. They've also started seeing their own therapist to work on their difficulty letting their adult children lead independent lives. The whole experience has made me much more cautious about who I trust and what information I share, even with family. But it's also shown me the importance of clear boundaries and direct communication. If there's one lesson I've learned from all this, it's that assumptions and indirect communication can spiral into unbelievable complications. I'm moving to San Francisco next month for my new position. This time, I'll be handling the sale of my apartment myself, with a licensed real estate agent and proper legal representation. And no, I haven't given anyone in my family a key to my new place. Thank you to everyone who has followed this crazy journey and offered support and advice along the way. Sometimes I still can't believe this actually happened, but I'm grateful for the growth that's come from it, even if it arrived in the most unexpected and unwelcome package. Final update, 1 year later. It's been exactly 1 year since my sister tried to sell my apartment out from under me, and so much has changed that I wanted to provide one final update for everyone who has followed this wild story. I've been settled in San Francisco for about 8 months now. The move was exactly what I needed, a a fresh start in a new city where I could process everything that happened and rebuild my sense of security. My new apartment has an excellent security system, a doorman, and not a single family member has a key. The sale of my Chicago apartment went smoothly with a proper real estate agent. I actually got 10% above asking price, which was a small victory that felt especially satisfying given how the unauthorized listing had undervalued it. I used some of those funds to furnish my new place and put the rest into investments. As for my family, we've continued with therapy, though we've transitioned to monthly sessions rather than weekly ones. The progress has been remarkable, if sometimes painful. About 6 months into our therapy, we had what our therapist called a fundamental breakthrough, when my father finally acknowledged the root of his controlling behavior. It turns out that my grandfather, his father, had lost nearly everything in a bad investment when my dad was in college, forcing him to drop out and work full-time to support himself. This created a deep-seated fear about financial security and a belief that he needed to protect his children from making financial mistakes, even if that meant overriding our autonomy. While this doesn't excuse what happened, understanding this context has helped me process his actions with more compassion. Ava has undergone the most dramatic transformation. After months of therapy, she made the difficult decision to move out of our hometown and away from our parents' immediate influence. She found a job in Denver and has been thriving in her new environment. We've actually grown closer through this experience, texting almost daily and having video calls at least once a week. She's become much more assertive about setting boundaries with our parents, which has been both challenging and healthy for everyone involved. My mother has had the hardest time adjusting to our new family dynamic. She still occasionally slips into old patterns, asking invasive questions about my finances or making comments about how I should be handling things. The difference now is that when I point out these boundary crossings, she's able to recognize them and step back, even if it takes her a moment. The family therapy sessions uncovered another interesting dynamic. My parents had always viewed me as the responsible one who doesn't need help, while seeing Ava as fragile and needing guidance. This led to a bizarre situation where they were simultaneously over-involved in Ava's life while expecting me to handle everything independently, except when they arbitrarily decided I needed intervention, like with the apartment situation. Recognizing this pattern has been crucial for all of us. As for practical outcomes, my parents have undergone a complete overhaul of how they handle documents and personal information. They've returned all of my personal papers and created a much healthier system for family emergency information. My father even consulted with an estate attorney to ensure they're respecting proper legal boundaries. The most surprising development came 3 months ago when my company opened a small satellite office in London, the very move that had sparked this whole debacle in the first place. When I mentioned this to my family during a video call, there was an awkward silence followed by nervous laughter. My father asked directly whether I was considering a transfer, and I was able to answer honestly without feeling like my response would trigger another unauthorized real estate listing. It was a small moment, but it represented enormous progress. Professionally, things are going extremely well. The San Francisco position came with a promotion, and I've been thriving in my new role. My boss recently mentioned potential opportunities for advancement next year, which is exciting. Last month, Ava visited me in San Francisco, her first trip to see my new place. As we sat on my balcony looking out at the city, she turned to me and said, "I'm so sorry I tried to sell your last apartment, but I have to admit, this view is way better." We both burst out laughing, a sign that we've reached a place where we can acknowledge the absurdity of what happened without minimizing its severity. The whole experience has made me reflect deeply on family dynamics, boundaries, and the painful growth that sometimes comes from having those boundaries violated. I've learned that it's possible to forgive without forgetting, to rebuild trust while maintaining healthy caution, and to love family members even while acknowledging their significant flaws. To everyone who offered advice, shared similar experiences, or just expressed outrage on my behalf throughout this saga, thank you. Your support helped me navigate one of the strangest and most challenging periods of my life. I hope that sharing my story might help others dealing with boundary violations or family overreach, even if their situations aren't quite as dramatic as having their home secretly listed for sale. I don't anticipate needing to post further updates, but I wanted to close this chapter properly. Sometimes the most unexpected crises lead to the most necessary growth, and that has certainly been true for my family. As bizarre as it sounds, I'm almost grateful for what happened, not for the violation itself, but for the healthier relationships that eventually emerged from the chaos.